Okay, it's time to get to work. This will be the last video on this beautiful miniature micro Manson lathe. And this, in fact, is tips number 934, which is part 5 of this series. Hope you're enjoying it. And this is what the general view of the machine is here in beautiful Studio B. So let's get started. Put your safety glasses on and your magnifiers. Let's begin. Now, it's so difficult to see things when you're 80 years old, and probably for younger guys too. So I am experimenting with the magnifier with the light on it here just to see if that helps. But I believe this will be in the way when I try to film. But I can really get in here and see what I'm doing. As I said much earlier, there was no 3-jaw chuck with this machine. I did, however, have this little 2-inch 3-jaw chuck with reverse jaws, but of course it's not going to fit, and it is very, very heavy and sticks up a little bit too high. So this isn't really usable. I suppose it could be adapted, with a backing plate, but you can see it's a bit out of proportion. And it weighs almost a pound, so it's not suitable. We would need a 3-jaw chuck about in this size if one is available, and I certainly don't have one. So you may have noticed that since the last video, I reversed the jaws in the 4-jaw independent chuck with the little threaded 7/16 back plate. So what I'm going to do is mount this back on the machine off camera, and then I will indicate it doesn't have to be that close, but this piece of aluminum tubing, which has already been machined on one side, but it hasn't been on this side. So let's try facing something off that's rather large like this and see what happens. I believe it to be successful, and then I'm going to play around a little bit with some brass. I'm quickly learning the limitations of this machine. This piece of aluminum is 1.5 inch in diameter, which is the same diameter as the chuck is. I'm having a heck of a time setting this tool up. I've choked it up. There's very little sticking out, and I'm at the very end of the travel here on the cross slide. So this isn't going to work very well at all, especially considering that this workpiece has been saw cut and is extremely crooked. But we shall forge ahead, and I do not expect to be successful. On a diameter like this, there's a tendency for it to grab and for the belt to slip. Let the facing begin. See what I mean? Okay, this will be the second pass. Well, it works pretty well, but it's just a slow process. This takes 2 or 3 minutes. On a big lathe, a real lathe, we could do it in, 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Large diameter like this, which is 1.5 inches, is beyond the capability of this little machine unless you have an awful lot of time to spare. And this is just aluminum. So let's change gears here, and off camera I'm going to go ahead and set up the brass. This is a little smaller, this is 1 inch, and we'll see how this cuts. This side is rough sawn, so I'll be back in a minute. So the finish is actually excellent when you think about it here. It's just that to square this work up is a major job for a tiny lathe. Okay, the 1-inch brass is in the 4-jaw chuck, trued up pretty darn close. And really what I'm doing here, this isn't a good setup because I'm just caught in a little bit of a, a jaw right here. I need to reverse the jaws so that the wide part of the jaw would grip, but it takes 15 or 30 minutes to reverse these jaws, and that's why I'm not doing it. But let's have a go with it and see if I can face this off. And I've changed the setup of the tool here just a little bit as well. Okay, it's really struggling to try to cut this brass. Now I have not resharpened the tool with a negative rake or anything like that. Lost my focus. Okay, here's the brass I was trying to cut, and I made no progress at all out here by the periphery, but it worked fairly well here toward the center, which is really a reduced diameter. So I would say that this is not a useful lathe for large pieces of brass, or even small pieces of brass. It might be relegated to aluminum. Let's see if I can drill a center hole in here with a #1 center drill. This is a #1 center drill in the 1/8 inch collet, and there is only one collet for that little tailstock chuck. Remember, it's not a 3-jaw chuck, it's a collet chuck. So I'll tighten that down real well and mount it in the tailstock. Here's the setup. Drill chuck mounted in the tailstock. I'm having my doubts, but let's see how that works. Well, it worked, but it sure did labor to drill that tiny little hole. I'll take this off and show you the hole, and we'll move on to something else. As I said, it worked well, it just took a long time. This brass might be a little bit harder than what I thought, but I certainly didn't notice it when I faced this on a big lathe. And of course we could drill a hole in here, but at this point we can only drill 1/8 inch holes unless we neck down our little drill bits to fit in this 1/8 inch collet. Well, I took the tiny little center drill out of the drill chuck and put in an 1/8 inch drill bit, which is the largest size that we can drill. We could certainly drill smaller ones because there are other collets for this, but if you wanted a little bit bigger than 1/8 inch, you could take, let's say, a 3/16 or something like that and neck it down, but I don't believe you'd have much success drilling larger holes with this anyway, so the point is moot. You know what? I think I was totally unrealistic trying to machine 1-inch brass. This is 3/4 12L14. I don't think I'll even try that. That would really be unrealistic. It wasn't too bad on the 3/4 aluminum, but this lathe is so tiny. Let's just call it a jeweler's lathe. This is a piece of 1/8 inch aluminum. Now we are in the size range where we might have some success. So looking in the accessory box here, we'll set the 1/8 inch material up in a collet. So the largest of the 4 collets is 1/8 inch, so that's what I'm going to use. And this is the spindle nut, I guess you would call it. So I'll go ahead and set that up with the 1/8 inch, and we'll see what we can do with this. 1/8 inch aluminum. Well, it's doable with the 1/8 inch aluminum, but I'm not sure this was good stock because in fact this is a piece of 1/8 inch filler rod for TIG welding, and it's just so soft and gummy I don't think it would cut well with really any cutting tool. This is a piece of 1/8 inch brass filler rod. Let's have a go with that, see what happens. Well, this is the 1/8 inch collet. Look at how small the other three are. I can't even imagine using this one. They aren't marked. I don't know what size that is, but I suppose for clockwork, that's what you need. If you are enjoying these videos on the micro lathes, you might also be interested in these videos of mine. One is on an antique model metal shaper right there, and that's 3 parts. And the other one is a hand-operated Armstrong type of tiny antique metal shaper, so check those videos out. Well, that concludes part 5, and to summarize things here just a little bit, I'm not used to these underpowered tiny lathes. I'm a little discouraged by it. It is not something that I would want to use probably because I'm used to larger machines, but if you've got a tiny little machine shop in a closet, then you work on clocks and just miniature projects like that, I think it would be useful if you had enough accessories, enough patience, and great eyesight. So we didn't accomplish a whole lot here except showing you its limitations and I guess what it can do as well. Now in the following video I'm going to talk about the dual Manson lathe. However, there probably will only be one video on that because there are no accessories at all for this machine. So I will study it, go over it, let it run with its motor and all that, but I will not be able to cut anything with this because this collet here is about a 32nd of an inch or smaller. So I don't see that as real useful, and then I do have to return these soon. I've already had them for over a week. So I hope you enjoyed the videos, and leave a comment, give me a thumbs up if I deserve it, or what are your thoughts on these miniature micro lathes. So this is Mr. Pete saying so long for now, and we'll have a few still pictures and maybe a little extra credit, so stand by for that if you have the nerve. See you next time.